Did you ever wonder? I do. Did you ever wonder why the sun always rises, but the stars never fall? Why dry land is never satisfied by water? And why fire never says enough?
The wonder of being born of God. I just find this verse in the first chapter of John more than spectacular, as where I've landed in my translation of the book of John, or at least the first chapter of the book of John, back from English into Hebrew. And the verse that we're on today is verse 13. So John 1:13 says, which were born not of blood, nor of the will of flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. And I a couple notable things before we get into some of the meat of that is just like the word born, which shows up at the very beginning of this verse in English, the way it's translated, but it's actually the last word in the Greek, which is similar to the context of the way you would have found it in Hebrew as well. And so the operating word is born in the whole idea. And of course, of God is more than huge when you think about it. And you know, without going into just a whole lot of details on the word born in Hebrew or the word blood or flesh, just the overarching 20,000-foot view that astounded me no end when I first realized it, that, you know, God is our Father spiritually, and to be born of him is just like somehow or another he determined that. And so it's like he is not the backup plan, I guess is a good way to put it. And it's what I learned through doing the sonship talk with Masculine Journey, that, you know, for God decided, that you would have a physical body, but then somehow or another he decided that you would be born again. If you're listening to this and you know God and you have been born again and you understand that, like, man, how did that happen? Because clearly I don't have the capacity to understand God and those kind of things, but he made himself known, made this idea known to me, that, wow, that I am by no means an orphan. He determined, it was his will, it was his delight, right? Like a dad, it was his delight that I was born of the flesh, but it was also his delight, probably more so, that I was born again, that I accepted Jesus as my Savior, that I took on that blood and got my innocence card for sure. And I continue to grow in that, like, oh my goodness. And so when you think about that, like, I don't know if you've had, and I hope you have had an opportunity to see God make himself known to somebody you've been praying for, and maybe even you've been witnessing to. But most recently, the one that I just am in awe of is that in the same year, last year, I got to see both my oldest sister, Cindy, and my brother, Mark, come to Christ in the same year. In other words, I'd been praying and praying and praying, you know, since I became a Christian in 91 for my brother and sister to really see this. And both of them had their struggles as I had my struggles in life. And I really, you know, at their age and whatever, although I prayed, I didn't have a lot of faith, I'll be honest. But miracle of miracles, right? This happened of God. It didn't happen of me. I mean, I happened to have the chance to share with them my faith and my story, and all those things kind of made them, I'm sure, hungrier than they may have been. You know, I got to play a little bit of John the Baptist maybe in their life. How that looked, I'm not sure, but I know the one that made all the impact, and I know the one that made their lives turn around. And both of them are hungry for the word, and they talk to each other all the time. And then I'd love to hear the reports back and forth from my sister or my brother about the other one, and how much they're enjoying the Bible and how much they're getting into it, and to see the fruit of that, and just clearly, you know, not just in their own lives, but as my brother's, you know, grandson, Devin, as he, you know, has had this remarkable change in faith, and you know, and all of a sudden doing a Bible study with his football team and all that. And then I found out my oldest nephew, which is my sister Cindy's oldest son, Michael, I heard that he's been talking about God lately. And here's this brilliant man, went to MIT, works for Google, lives out in California, and again, I've been praying for him since, 91. Well, we can pray for both Michael and Devin some more. I don't know where all that is, but I do know this, that the story is that somehow or another, God makes himself known to us, and then you get to be, based on your receiving of Jesus Christ, right? And again, I watched that episode actually of The Chosen last night where he was in Nazareth, and you can't be saved unless you accept me. And he so desperately wants that, because he so desperately wants, obviously, you become his bride, but he also wants you to become his brother. In other words, he wants you to know the joy of knowing the Father and to walk in sonship. In other words, to have that Father, that you're not an orphan in any way, shape, or form. And when you need anything, your Father is always there to help you. And to walk in that is just more than amazing, as whether or not, you're trying to, like this morning, I was cleaning the mills on our mixer because we like to mill a lot of flour, and I'm trying to figure out how to get this thing tighter so it would mill better or whatever. And I, once again, need help and turn to God. And then I'm trying to get some help as to how I can stay closer to the Lord. And again, I turn to the Father, and I turn to the Father, and I turn to the Father. And so the fact that I have a Father and God is more than amazing. The fact that this didn't happen, as this verse says, it didn't happen because of the bloodline, okay? Yes, I have a bloodline, but it wasn't because of the bloodline that I have God as my Father. It wasn't because of the flesh. In other words, it wasn't because my parents desire to procreate, just like obviously I did for my children to be, but that wasn't the magic. That wasn't the reason that it happened. Okay. And it wasn't, that the will of any father that I would be born, except the Father. In other words, it was Elohim is the one that's described in this verse. It was the will of God. And so this idea that I'm an orphan or in any way, shape, not an heir to the kingdom is far from the truth. The truth is, and the thing that I got to walk in, and the thing that I got to accept by faith, and the thing I got to keep focusing on is to get away from this. I can do it on my own and get back to being a son. I hope you're with me in this. And I thank you so much for listening and just pondering the whole thing of, wow, the wonder of being a son of the Father.
Do you ever wonder? Did you ever wonder? I do.